My name's Raymond, but no one calls me that. Most folks around Whitmore High just called me Ray the Mop. No, Mr. Raymond. No, sir. Just Ray. That's all right, though. I got used to it after the first 15 years. I've worked at that school for 29 years. Not as a teacher, not as a counselor, just a janitor. Custodian, they call it now. Makes it sound fancier. But a mop's still a mop, no matter what name you give it. I cleaned bathrooms, scraped gum off the underside of desks, fixed lockers that squeaked, and picked up paper airplanes that never made it to their target. I even learned how to get glitter out of carpet. Trust me, that's a war in itself. I came in before sunrise and left long after the last kid got picked up from detention. My hours were quiet, my work invisible, and I liked it that way because if I kept moving, if I kept scrubbing and sweeping, I didn't have to think about the silence waiting for me back home. I lost my wife, June, 16 years ago. Cancer. Then 3 years after that, I lost our daughter, Emma. She was only 15. They used to come to my little music room every Saturday morning, back when I was a music teacher, years before I wore gloves and pushed trash carts. Emma would play the violin, June the piano, and me? I had a harmonica. Never knew what I was doing with it, but they never seemed to mind. When Emma passed, I couldn't go back to the classroom. I just couldn't. Every chair felt like hers. Every echo down the hall carried her laugh. So I quit. Or maybe I disappeared. Hard to tell the difference when your heart breaks that way. But a year later I came back, not as a teacher, but as a janitor. People asked me why. I never told them the real reason. It's because the school still smelled like her shampoo in the morning. Because the old piano in room 204 still had a sticky. Because if I stayed close, maybe I wouldn't lose Oliver. I never made a fuss, never missed a shift. And no one asked where I went at lunch. I always sat in the boiler room with a peanut butter sandwich and an apple. Some kids were kind. Most ignored me. Teachers, too. They'd nod, sure, but they never really saw me. I was background noise, a broom in motion. But sometimes, just sometimes, I'd leave a mint on a desk where a kid looked like they'd had a hard day. Or tape a note to a locker that said, "It gets better, I promise." No one ever asked where they came from, but I saw their smiles the next day. And still, if I didn't show up tomorrow, I don't think anyone would notice. Or at least, that's what I thought. Until the day I didn't. I woke up on a Thursday morning with a heaviness in my chest. Not the kind that comes from a bad dream or sleeping wrong, but the kind that tells you, you ain't getting up today, old man. My knees were ice, my ribs tight. Even the light through the curtain felt too loud. I tried to sit up, but the world spun like a hallway clock after too much time. So I laid back down and whispered to the ceiling, "Sorry, kids, Ray the Mop's calling in sick." First time in 29 years. I didn't have anyone to call. No emergency contact. No family left. No principal who'd pick up if I rang before 6 a.m. So I just didn't go. I figured the day would go on, same as ever. They'd find a substitute or just forget to empty the trash. The school would hum and clatter and echo like always. But something strange happened. The next day, I woke to my phone buzzing. 10 missed calls, 2 voicemails. One from the vice principal, confused. Another from the front office secretary, nervous. And one more from a student I didn't know I mattered to. "Mr. Ray, I hope you're okay. I noticed the broom closet light was off. You always turn it on by 5:30. Please come back soon." That one voicemail, I played it 7 times that day. Later, I found out what happened at school. That Thursday, the bathrooms flooded. No one knew where the shutoff valve was but me. The art teacher cried because someone spilled paint and ruined her students' work. I used to clean her brushes every Friday without her asking. She never said thank you. She did now, and the girl named Ellie, the one who always sat near the stairwell with her hoodie up, she noticed the hallway floor was sticky, No one else did. She also noticed the mint wasn't there on her desk that morning. Ellie. I didn't know much about her, but I'd seen the way other kids looked at her, like she didn't quite belong in their world. I saw her cry once, not loudly, not publicly, just one tear behind a locker door. That's when I started leaving the mints. Never signed them, never said a word, just left them there, like a quiet handshake between strangers. Well, Ellie, she wrote something that day. I didn't know it until later, but she taped a folded note to the broom closet door with duct tape. And in big black letters, she wrote, "Dear Mr. Ray, I saw you, even when no one else did." Under that, she wrote, "I don't know your last name. I don't know your story. But I know the floors stopped squeaking when you came. I know my shoes don't stick anymore. I know someone cared enough to leave a mint every Monday. Please come back. You matter here." That note stayed up all day. By the time the final bell rang, there were 17 more taped around it. Teachers, students, even Coach Wallace, the guy who once yelled at me for buffing the gym floor too loud. He wrote, "Didn't know how much we needed you until you weren't here." The next morning, the entire hallway was covered, locker to locker, note after note. Some funny, some messy, some with drawings, some that just said, "Thank you." Back home, in my little living room, I just sat there, harmonica in hand, blanket on my lap, tears rolling down a face I didn't think had any left. It turns out I wasn't invisible. I was just quiet. And sometimes, quiet things still sing, if you're willing to listen. It took me 4 days to get back on my feet. Nothing serious, just a touch of winter in my bones and a little too much silence in my lungs. Doctor called it exhaustion. I called it old age, catching up with memories. But that Monday morning, I laced up my old boots, buttoned my janitor shirt, the one with my name stitched in blue thread, and grabbed my ring of keys. The walk to school never felt so long. I kept wondering if the notes were still there, or if Friday had swept them away. If those words were just a passing kindness. You know how people can be. But when I turned the corner, I stopped. There was a line of students, teachers, even the old librarian, who never said more than, "Shh." They were standing, waiting, outside the school doors. And when they saw me, someone shouted, "He's here!" Then something I never thought I'd hear in my whole life happened. Applause, not for a touchdown, not for a principal, not even for a graduation speech. For me, a man with a mop bucket and arthritis. They stepped aside to let me through. Ellie was there too, standing near the front with a small white envelope in her hand. She didn't say anything at first, just held it out with both hands, like it was something fragile. "We made you something," she whispered. Inside the envelope was a folded piece of cardstock, handwritten, shaky letters in a dozen different inks. "Thank you for keeping our school clean. You made us feel safe. Your silence was never empty. It was kindness. Ray, you're the reason some of us smiled on Mondays." And at the very bottom, in red ink, was one line that broke me. "You didn't just clean our hallways. You cleaned the parts of our lives no one else noticed." I didn't cry, not there, but my hands were shaking so much, Ellie reached out and held one. "We didn't know how to say it before," she said. "But we do now." They led me inside, and that's when I saw the real surprise. Room 104, once an old storage space, now had a hand-painted sign over the door. Ray's room, where quiet things still sing. Inside, they'd set up a little corner with a chair, a rug, a shelf of harmonicas, and a photograph of me and Emma, taken 20 years ago during a winter recital. I hadn't seen that photo in ages. Where did they even find it? I sat in that chair, ran my thumb across one of the harmonicas, and for the first time in decades, I played. It wasn't perfect. My breath was rusty, my fingers stiff, but the notes still came, slow and steady, like sunlight through a school window in March. And no one laughed. No one turned away. They just listened like they'd been waiting for this song all year. When the last note faded, Ellie knelt beside me. "Will you teach us sometime?" I smiled. "If you'll help me carry my mop when I get tired." She nodded. Deal. That night, I walked home slower than usual. Not because I was tired, but because I didn't want the day to end. Turns out, I wasn't invisible. I was part of the story, just a quieter paragraph. But a paragraph worth reading. People think the best gift you can give an old man is peace and quiet. But what they gave me was noise. Beautiful, imperfect, joyful noise. It started the following week. Every Tuesday and Thursday, after the last bell rang, a handful of kids would wander into Ray's room. At first, it was just Ellie, 2 boys from band class, and a shy girl named Marisol, who didn't speak much, but hummed when she worked on math problems. I didn't plan a lesson. Didn't even think I'd be teaching. But Ellie walked in, sat down cross-legged on the rug, and said, "So, how do you make a harmonica not sound like a duck being stepped on?" I laughed so hard I coughed for a minute. Then I showed her. We started small, breathing exercises, listening to blues recordings, passing harmonicas around like candy. Some days we didn't play at all. Some days we just sat. One kid cried because his dad left. Another wrote a poem about his dog that passed. Ellie started bringing her guitar, out of tune, cracked, and still perfect. It wasn't about music. It was about presence, about being seen, about knowing someone would be in that room at 4:15. Even if you had a bad test, a bad lunch, a bad week. They started calling it Ray Time. Someone made a group chat. I didn't know how to use it, so they printed screenshots for me to read. Going to Ray Time today? I need a break from people? Ray let me sit in silence yesterday. It helped more than talking. He taught me the G scale. He didn't even make fun of my braces whistle. I'd go home and reread those printouts like letters from a family I never thought I'd have again. One day, Ellie stayed after everyone else had gone. She was tuning her guitar, hands a little shaky. I asked if something was wrong. She didn't answer right away. Then she said, soft and slow, "You know, when I wrote that note on your closet door, I didn't think you'd ever see it." She looked up, but I had to say it. "Because you were the first adult who made me feel like I wasn't a burden." She let that hang in the air like a chord waiting for its final note. Then added, "My mom's been gone since I was 10. My dad tries. But I needed someone to just sit with." I reached out, placed a hand on hers. "Then we both got lucky, didn't we?" She nodded, wiped a tear, and played me the first song she ever wrote. It wasn't polished, but it was real. Every wrong note told the truth better than a perfect scale ever could. I told her that. She smiled through her tears. Ray's room grew, not in size, just in heart. One afternoon, a boy named Aaron brought in his little sister. Said she was too scared to start school, but would be brave if she met Mr. Ray. I let her sit in my chair. She beamed like she'd just been crowned queen of the hallway. Another day, the principal dropped by. Said he hadn't seen this kind of energy in years. "You sure you don't want to teach again?" I looked around at the kids, doodling music notes on the walls. Someone braiding Ellie's hair. A boy napping under the window with his trumpet beside him. "I already am," I said. At home, my harmonica sat on the windowsill now, not as a memory of who I lost, but as a promise of what I'd found. I wasn't just Ray the mop anymore. I was Mr. Raymond to some. Ray, the listener, to others. The guy who sees you, to one little girl who once hid behind her backpack for a whole week. And maybe that's the most anyone could ever ask for. Not fame, not applause, just a seat in someone's memory, and the chance to help them stay. They asked me to speak at the end of year assembly. I thought it was a mistake. Principal Harris knocked on the broom closet door like he was approaching royalty, which, trust me, is not easy when you're talking to a man in overalls covered in floor wax. "Ray," he said, "the students nominated you to give this year's farewell speech." I laughed so hard I dropped my dustpan. "Me? I haven't stood in front of a crowd since Emma's recital." He nodded. "That's exactly why. I didn't sleep the night before. I kept pacing around my kitchen, harmonica in hand, wondering what to say to a gym full of teenagers and teachers who never really looked at me before this year. What would they expect? Wisdom? Humor? I had neither. Just a mop, a quiet corner, and the memories of 2 people I loved more than breath. But when I showed up that morning and saw Ray's room decorated with hand-painted signs and music notes, when I saw Ellie in the front row, holding her guitar like it was a shield, when I saw a second grader, who didn't even go to Whitmore High, wearing a shirt that said, "Mr. Ray saw me too," I knew what I had to do. I didn't walk up to the podium when they called my name. Instead, I pulled out a folding chair and set it in the middle of the gym floor. Then I placed a harmonica in the seat and said this: "Before I was your janitor, I was a music teacher. Before that, I was a father. Before that, I was just like you, wondering if anyone saw me." My daughter once said something before her last hospital visit. She said, "Daddy, sometimes the world is too loud, and all I want is one quiet person who stays." I didn't know what she meant then, but I do now, because some of you've been that quiet person. To your friends, to your classmates, to a stranger sitting alone. And if you haven't yet, I promise you this: the world always has one seat left for someone willing to listen. I pointed to the harmonica in the chair. "This is Emma's. She never got to finish her song, so I'm leaving it here. Not for me, but for you. If you ever feel lost, or small, or like the janitor is the only one who knows your name, remember, a hallway only feels empty when you don't look close enough. I saw you, and I hope you saw me too." Silence. Then the kind of applause that doesn't come from clapping hands, but from breaking hearts. Ellie walked up and sat in the chair, lifted the harmonica, played one long shaking note, and suddenly 50 kids pulled out their instruments, real or imagined, and filled the gym with sound. Trumpets, guitars, whistles, laughter through tears. It was chaos. It was music. It was Emma's song, finally finished. After that day, I retired. But I still walk the halls sometimes, mop in hand just to make sure no one left gum behind. Ray's room is now a full program. They painted a mural on the far wall. "Quiet things still sing." Every year, the seniors leave one empty chair at graduation for the person who reminded them it's okay to sit down, to listen, to stay. And sometimes, a harmonica shows up in the mail. No note, just sound waiting to be heard. I used to think I was invisible, but it turns out I was just needed in ways no one could say. So if you're out there, sweeping, waiting, wondering if it matters, it does. The hallway is quieter without you. The world is softer when you show up.